we made it.
Hey, we're here.
Right PT Show.
Welcome to the Right PT Show. So I'm Dr. Tyler Billings. This is Dr. Kate Anderson. We're both doctors of physical therapy. We're both partners at Right Physical Therapy. Looking forward to today's discussion. It's sort of looking like nice weather for this discussion, but eventually you'll be doing this. Let's just say what's happening right now outside is assisting in what we're going to be talking about.
That
weeds,
is true.
Pulling weeds. Rain equals more weeds.
That is correct.
So, I just wanted to start with, go ahead and start, Cade. I know what you want to say. Just say it. Let's just get it out.
I don't have anything to say. I just have a question.
Oh, you do?
So you, the last couple of weeks, you mentioned that you had guaranteed that you would win the March Madness Bracket Challenge at Right PT. I'm just curious. I'm just curious how your team's doing.
Yeah, it says I'm like 50 plus position when I looked it up on the app.
50
like,
plus?
50 plus. So I'm like, what does the plus mean? That meant another 64. So I'm in 114th place.
Actually,
or 22nd. 122nd actually. I'm 122nd out of 130. So I'm doing pretty
It's
good.
actually out of 124. Just so you know.
No. I'm literally almost in dead
I
last
think you're
place.
third to last place.
This is like, I passed Dell though. Dell's in the background. I know I passed
Dell.
you, Dell. Take that, Dell.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But I'm way off on my predictions. Illinois, I know one thing I can guarantee, Illinois is not going to win the whole thing.
Yes.
When that happened, I'm like, I'm done for. Like, oh my. So anyways, go Zags. I'm going for the Zags. So.
Hey, it's all good, man. I think lesson learned,
Yeah.
don't make guarantees on things that you're not directly involved in.
Yeah, that's the lesson.
Lesson learned today.
You actually do pretty well in this tournament brackets.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah.
So we're going to jump in, gardening injuries.
Yes. Let's do
Right?
it.
What's more painful than your bracket at 122nd? It's pulling weeds outside. Oh my
They
goodness.
just keep coming. It's the worst.
My kids right now are cringing that I'm even talking about this because this morning I was eating my cereal and I'm like, there's weeds back there. You don't have school today. I know what you can do today. Go pull some weeds. It actually is a rough time to pull weeds right now. Those weeds are just nice and fresh. So let's talk about what are some common injuries, what are some ways to prevent it. So most common injuries, gardening, low back, hands down. If you're like me and you get lazy, your knees are locked and you're just down here. You might be talking on the phone, right? Sometimes I got my AirPods on. I'm just like pulling some weeds. But staying in these prolonged positions, which happens with weeds, right? Those weeds, there's never just one weed in your lawn. So there's like 20 billion weeds out there and you're in that position and it's that pulling motion. And we all know that those weeds don't just come out easily. You might get those select few where you're like, yes, that just slid right out.
Yeah.
But majority of them, you gotta get a nice good pull. So common injuries, low back, knee injuries, the bursa, you're kneeling on your knees for a long time or your knees folded back behind so you get that hamstring-ish problem. Shoulders, right? You got that reaching and you're reaching underneath the tree. The tennis elbow from pulling the weeds over and over. Wrist, neck, and the neck. I mean, that is a big one because Cade has explained it so well a couple times ago. You got two necks, believe it or not. We're like giraffes.
Yeah.
Right? You got an upper neck and a lower neck, and that upper neck gets so extended like this as you're pulling the weeds and you're underneath. Like it puts a ton of strain. That actually just hurts my head doing it for that long. So prolonged positioning in gardening, it leads to disaster. And I hate to say it, we're all getting older every day, right? Every one of us, even you, Del, we're all getting older a little bit each day. And what happens as we age, there's a thing called collagen. It's a mixture of proteins in your body. Basically, it's like the glue of the body, and it fills in all the gaps in our body to help support it. And that collagen is the building block for tendons and ligaments and muscles. And you see that collagen decrease in its reproduction in the body as we age. So when we have injuries, you still have that support system like you did when you were younger. So the aging process leads to further injury as well while we're gardening. And I'm not saying that because that's a bad thing. What it means is that you got to come prepared and be warmed up, right? You got to come prepared. I don't see a lot of young kids pulling weeds. This is why I'm talking about the aging process. I usually don't see a 7-year-old pulling weeds. So I'm talking to all of you who are 25 plus right now in this moment to say, there is this aging process, and trust me, you'll pay the price if you don't pay attention to this. So proper warm up is going to be critical, which we'll talk about a little bit later in that process. But I just want to make sure. So I'm trying to see if I missed anything else, Kate. I think kind of the essence, our bodies are strong, right? Our bodies are pretty resilient, right? Like you have the strength and the support to go weed, majority of us, right? It's not like you got to go pump some iron and go to the gym and be like, okay, now I'm ready to pull weeds. But you do have to have a stable structure. You got to have a proper warm up. You don't just weed to get in shape to weed, right? It's like, well, this is gonna be a good activity to get my heart rate up and get moving. You gotta be prepared to weed, right? Whatever, to your stamina, I would start walking, maybe get on the bike, get your joints loosened up before you just hop out there and start pulling some weeds. I think that's the best advice that I can give you is be active now, start lighter on things, instead of walking 12 miles, start off with 1 mile, then 2 mile, then 3 mile, gauge what your body can do. That's probably the number one advice I can give right now.
For sure. And from my perspective, I couldn't say any more how important it is to be as active as you possibly can, right? And so, the people that are wondering if they should be out gardening and doing things, I would say if you can do it, please do it. The more active you are, the better. I love your point. We are getting older, so you have to be smarter about things, right? Our body really can handle a lot of things, but as you age, you tend to have more overuse injuries, you tend to have more issues that might arise, so you just have to prep yourself, and you just have to have strategies in place to make sure you're not overusing certain musculature and different things that way, right? And so I have come up with a few strategies that are good to think about when you're out doing gardening. And so one of them would be lifting. Let's talk about lifting mechanics for a second. The lazy way to do lifting that I find myself doing all the time, maybe pull back here for a second, would be that you are here and you sort of just bend forward like this to pick something up, and you use mostly your back. You tend to kind of like arch your back to lock it in place, and then you just pull up like this. That, if you do it continuously over and over and over again, is going to overwork the back. You could develop an overuse injury from that. The way that you're actually supposed to do that to reduce some of the strain in the low back is bend the knees here. So bend the knees, drop the butt back, and use your legs as well to push yourself up. So it's not all just here, bending at the waist, but it's bend the knees, drop the butt back, pick up from this. And so as I'm doing that, I'm thinking of a couple things, like picking up bags of soil, for example, like picking up a wheelbarrow, right, for example. I do this all the time. I just pick up a wheelbarrow like this, right? I do that all day long if I got a project, but at the end of the day, I'm hating life. So one of them is lifting mechanics. Make sure to bend the knee. Make sure to drop the butt back as you're doing that. The second one, be strategic when you're lifting, right? And so I do this all the time. If I have to pick up some bricks or something and move to the other side of the yard, I'm going to take as many as I possibly can, right? I'm like picking them up and I'm doing a bunch of things. It's like a big, heavy, like soil bag, and like my wife's watching. I want to impress her, so I'm going to take that thing, and I'm trying to
give me a second one. I can do this. No, I'm fine.
I'm trying to not strain on my face, but in all reality, I'm like screaming inside, right? If you can break things up a little bit, it's smart, right? So, for example, if you can take half a bag of soil, if you can find a way to do that, do it. If you can take just a couple bricks at a time, do it, right? You don't have to load up the wheelbarrow to its absolute max, which I do all the time too, right? And then I'm like, oh, it's gonna tip because I'm trying to do it in less trips. Just be smart about it, right? Like break things up when you're lifting. Lift less weight is good for you, right? So if you can break things up there, that's super important. Here's another one. Arrange things before you lift it. So if you're trying to pick something up here and move it over to here, what a lot of people do is they lift, and as they're lifting, they're twisting, right? If you can figure out a way to arrange it to where you don't have to lift and twist, that's also going to help you, right? And so set up the wheelbarrow in a better position to where it's lift and place it in rather than twist, right? So arrange things beforehand. That is also going to reduce a lot of strain on the low back, on the neck, on the shoulders, and everything else that way.
And you can hear all the things that lead to the injuries. You trying to be quick and fast and get it done. Like taking a ton of bricks, loading up, you're going to do less trips with the wheelbarrow. Like we do those things, or we don't bend from our knees because I'm already here. And it's just easy. I'm just going to stay down in this flex position. When you think about it, that's probably what leads to more injury. Like,
For
do
sure.
that, which is probably going to take you a little bit more time. It's probably the safer route.
For sure. And that's the thing, like, you don't have to get it all done in one day all the time. Like, break it up a little bit. Like, realize that, I know sometimes you feel like, oh, this is the only day I can do this, and I get it. I've totally been there before. But at the same time, not worth overstraining yourself, right? So another one, use correct tools. If you can find a tool that has a long handle on it, use that, right? I have found so many times I'm planting something in the garden, and my wife's gonna laugh at me because she's like, when have you ever planted in the garden? Okay, maybe this is my wife's experience, right? You're using the little like hand shovel, right?
Yes.
And you're just on your knees and you're going, and then you break up the soil, and then you like crawl forward and you break up the soil. Like, if you can prep the soil beforehand with a long handled shovel, right, in a standing position, and do that beforehand, it's just going to cause you it's going to help you reduce your strain so much, right?
Yes.
So again, use handles. When I'm walking around the weeds in my lawn, which get crazy sometimes, right? Dandelions, oh my gosh, I could go on and on and on about dandelions forever. And then you take care of it, but your neighbor doesn't, and then the seeds come over and you just, you know what I mean? You want to start doorbell hitching your neighbor in the middle of the night because you're mad at them. We've all been there. So yeah, as you're walking around, sometimes you do that. If you get down on the ground, and next thing you know, you're crawling all over the lawn again. Like, they have long-handled tools that can help pull out weeds, right? So sometimes it's worth investing in things like that because of the reduction in strain it causes you.
And not even just the leverage, right? Because that's a good physics lesson, right? The longer the lever away from the mass, the less force you need, right?
Yep, for sure.
And physics lesson there for everyone. But the tool as well, right? You try to grab that darn weed, and as you can't grab it, you gotta pull more, and then you're flexing more and twisting more to get that one out. Like, those tools are so nice and dandy.
Yeah.
They can, I said it back.
Yeah, you know.
So you can pop those weeds out just so much.
Yeah.
So much easier.
Yeah.
And another thing with weeds, I would say is Roundup, right? I've learned that last year. Like, I'm gonna weaken the weeds, and then I can come back through, and my kids. Kids, but little kids and other people can come through and grab those so much easier by using Roundup or a weed killer of some sort versus like I'm grabbing a nice fresh one right at the beginning of April to try to tug it out.
Yeah, for sure. Just a couple other things here. Using a knee pad when you can. If you do have to be on your knees for a while, using knee pads, right? There's something that's called carpenter's knee. Carpenter's knee. I've also heard it called housemaid's knee. Basically, when people are on their knee, like scrubbing the floor or working on the floor for a long time, there is a bursa, which is a fluid-filled sac meant to cushion structures in the knee, and it sits right over the top of the patella or kneecap. That thing can get inflamed. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this before, but somebody that just has this huge inflamed sac on the front of their knee, that can happen if you're on your knee for too long, right? It can become irritated. So using a pad is smart, right? Like anytime you can cushion your joints with those type of things, that's important. Last point I really wanted to make here, listen to your body, right? Like if you start to ache, get up and take a break. And when you take a break, make sure you're changing positions, right?
Yes.
So one thing I've learned for a long time, and my wife's really good at this because she doesn't like finishing projects. She likes starting projects. I hope she's listening. She likes starting projects, not finishing them. So she goes from project to project to project to project. It's actually probably smart on your body, right? Because if you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, sometimes it's worth it to get up, go try a different project that's in a different position, right? So it's not too much of a prolonged position. And then you can come back to that later and sort of alternate projects back and forth. So those are just a couple of tips that I've seen that really help with these kind of injuries.
So an example would be, hey, I'm going to go plant 5 things of tomatoes in the garden, and then I'm going to stand up, I'm going to go over here and check in on the hummingbird house and tweak the hummingbird house.
I'm gonna mow the front lawn, then I'm going to go plant some seeds, and then I'm going to go
it's really smart.
Like back and forth.
So what in the body, like, why is it that way, Cade? Like, I've noticed when I'm doing weeding where I just I'm super sore the next day. Right? Like, woo, I remember one year my back, I was like, whoa. Like, and I didn't know it there in the moment. Right? Like, I'm going through, I'm weeding. I bet you a couple other people can relate that way. Well, why is that? Like, why is that happening? Why have that such delay?
There's a law in physiology called the law of specificity that really stands out to me when you say that. Like, your body will, your body will adapt to things that you specifically train.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So for example, I experienced this when I ran my first half marathon last year. I trained and I actually trained really well, I thought, until I showed up, and it was the most hilly course I'd ever seen, like way more hilly than I thought it was. My body had not adapted to running uphill and downhill, and I struggled. I wasn't prepared for it because my body hadn't specifically trained in that, right? And so when it comes to gardening, for example, how many things are you doing in life where you're having to do that, where you're in a prolonged position, bent forward, right? Like you're probably not doing a lot of that, right? And so it's something that you haven't specifically trained. What it does is it lengthens musculature, and then you have to kind of eccentrically control that from going even farther forward because you got your weight pulling forward.
Yes.
And so it's just things that our bodies haven't been adapted to. It's a new thing, right? So that's why you have to make sure to train and kind of get ready for it.
And we see this all the time. When it was first sunny and I was on my way into work, it was like all of Twin Falls was out and like walking and riding bikes and doing everything. So that warm weather, we see a lot of injuries that happen from here. And Cade mentioned that eccentric control. So that's if you're holding a dumbbell here and you do a curl this way, that's concentric. As you slowly lower it, that's the eccentric part. Eccentric means the muscle is contracting, but it's lengthening. Concentric is the muscle is contracting and it's shortening, right? The muscle actually lengthens and shortens. It's the eccentric where you get a lot of soreness, right? So eccentric, if you do a lot of eccentric training in the gym, you get that soreness in the muscle. So that's just telling you that you've most likely overloaded it with your body, right? So the next day where it's like, ooh, man, I'm really sore, that should tell you something. That doesn't mean go do more weeds down. I'm gonna go work it off and, well, no pain, no gain. That's false. Like, that is telling you something like, wow, I've really overloaded it. If you're feeling that the next day, because sometimes you don't know, you shouldn't be doing the same activity again, or else you're going to really overload it. We've talked about this before. There's a threshold to tissue injury. So if I fall off a ladder, and here's the threshold right here of injury, of so much force, and I go boom, and I fall off a ladder, bam, that's a tear in the back, whatever. But if I do things for a prolonged period of time, this threshold of injury drops down to here, and say I have a prolonged force right here. I'm just like, I'm just staying here, I'm weeding. It drops down until it crosses over like this. So the threshold will cross because of the length of the load. So when the length of the load stays there, the threshold drops. And that's why if someone's like, well, what the heck? I was just weeding, and on my last weed that I pulled, boom, I felt a pop in my back. You weren't lifting heavy weight. It's that prolonged period of having a sustained load.
Yeah, and I think in terms of listening to your body, if you're really sore after gardening, it doesn't mean you can't garden anymore. It means you can't garden in the manner in which you did garden before, right? Like your body's telling you something. You need to apply the strategies we talked about today, whether that's more breaks, whether that's using the longer handle, whatever it may be, right? Like you have to change the way you did things because we want everyone's yards to look great. We're not telling people to, hey, if it hurts, don't garden. Like I want to see a beautiful Twin Falls and the Magic Valley and Boise and Eastern Idaho. We want you to be out and be doing things actively, but listen to your body and make adjustments when it's talking to you.
So let's talk about some quick warm-ups here that you can do. Let's start with repeated lumbar extension. So we've talked about this a lot on Facebook Live. You have discs in between. So here's your vertebrae. You have a disc in between that cushions. A lot of the times the issue comes from that disc that wants to slide, especially in flexion. So a basic one, you just put your hands in the bottom of your back along the buttocks here, and you're going to slightly bend the knees and just bend backwards just little by little. You're just going to go a little bit further with each rep. This is also a great way to take a micro break as well, where you can break up the activity that you're doing. But these back extensions are a really successful thing. Disclaimer here, I'm not giving you physical therapy here. These are just tips on a few exercises that you can do. It doesn't mean it works for everyone. You need to be thoroughly diagnosed and assessed if you're having back issues for what type of exercise you need to be doing. So that's the disclaimer here. It doesn't mean, hey, I'm going to run off. Tyler said to do this on Facebook Live, so it's going to fix my back. Right? There's a lot to back injury and a lot that we study. So that's the first one, repeated lumbar extension. The next, a little thoracic rotation, right? Where you can just stand up and you're like, ooh, I'm just going to rotate, and I would just do the same side. I'm gonna rotate, keep my count my neck. See how my head and neck all move with it? I'm not straining my neck this way. I'm not punching it up. It's just nice speed, right? And then this way, this nice consistent speed. I'm gonna rotate. Actually feels really good, right? So it's gonna help get the thoracic spine going. A cervical retraction. We've been talking about this a lot. We just talked about it earlier. We have two necks. So when the neck gets forward like this, look at my back, my shoulders. So you sit up tall. It's usually in a chair, and you're gonna go straight back with the chin in here. So you're basically driving the chin towards the back of your head. That's just a good stretch for the neck, a really good exercise to do while you're driving as well. Nice little tip. And then the last one would be like a basic hamstring stretch, right? Where you keep the curve in your back, right? You can set the leg out. I do one leg at a time, and I'm just gonna lean forward like this, and I keep the curve in my back, and I'm bringing my chest towards the ground. It's just a good way to pump and get some blood going to the hamstring. That's a really high area of soreness I've seen in gardening. So those are your basic take-home exercises to do to get prepped. For me, take home, be active now so you can be active in the yard, is what I would say. Right? Like, be active now so you can be active in the yard, and listen to your body. Listen to what your body's telling you for how long you can go and what type of activities you can do. Know your body so you can do the activities that you want.
Yeah. And I don't really honestly have anything to add. I would just say, Tyler, I love competing with you. I think when Weber State beat Utah State when you made the free throws, that was great. You won that round.
Yeah.
I won the bracket challenge this round.
Yeah, you did.
So we're about even.
Yeah.
So I would say let's have a new competition. Who's going to have the best looking yard this year?
Best looking yard, it's on. Kate doesn't know what he's getting into here.
Yeah.
I take some pride in the yard, man.
So do I.
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go.
It's on. We'll have to set up our own criteria.
We're
Dell, you're gonna have to come assess it.
Yeah, Dell will be the judge.
We'll do. But yeah, thank you for everyone for joining us. Contact us, rightpt.com, any of our 13 clinic locations. If you have questions regarding this, we're offering currently complimentary screens. So if you're right now going, I don't know, something's weird, something's not feeling right, my back, my hip, my shoulder, my neck, whatever it is, get into with one of our doctors of physical therapy, get it assessed, see what is actually going on, complimentary on us to make sure that you're safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks for being here.
Yeah, appreciate it.